Hello.
Am, am I?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live session hosted by Digilit, an initiative by JMC students which aims at encouraging, engaging, and enlightening netizens towards digital safety and well-being. I am Srishti, a member of Digilit's editorial team, and I will be hosting this conversation on online safety for the queer community. Joining us today is our guest, Mr. Kanav Sahgal, who is working with an organization called Harmless Hugs that advocates for the queer community. Mr. Sahgal himself identifies as a queer person. He is a human rights activist who is currently pursuing his master's in development studies from Azim Premji University. Welcome, sir. We are glad to have you on board with us. Hope you are doing well.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here, and I hope you and everyone else is doing well.
So, to begin with, I would first like to ask you a question. As we've all witnessed that the COVID-19 pandemic has affected everyone's mental health, especially with the catastrophic second wave. In what ways, Mr. Sehgal, do you feel that people from the online community have dealt with being locked down at home for such a long period of time, especially, in cases where the people around them may not be very supportive?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question, and this is something that came up in the first wave also.
Yeah.
When the lockdown was implemented the first time, that was an unprecedented situation. The entire COVID-19 pandemic has been unprecedented, but one of the things that I remember discovering when the first wave hit, for example, was that cases of domestic violence increased, and this
Yeah.
wasn't an LGBT issue. This is just an issue that has impacted women, and also mental health issues became a big problem back in the first wave, because at that time the pandemic was new, the virus was new, and it was a completely unprecedented situation for everyone. Now during the second wave, things became worse. We all know the number of people who died. We all know the struggles that a lot of us have gone through in our own families. And I think specifically, if you look at the LGBTQ community, a major issue has always been the fact that for many of us, our families are not safe spaces. And so when you stay in a homophobic environment, you not only have to hide your identity, but you also have to take care of your health. I'm also currently doing a lot of research work at my university, and my research work basically looks at the challenges that LGBTQ people face at home vis-a-vis the pressure to get married. And what I discovered was that during the second wave of the second pandemic, the second coronavirus wave, because a lot of people who are working professionals have been forced to work from home, they're now working at home with their family, and they're now facing pressure to get married. And that becomes very difficult, right? Because you have your queer identity that you're trying to hide, and at the same time you're dealing with the stress of employment. Some people lost their jobs also. On top of that, your parents are pressurizing you to get married. On top of that, you can't meet friends. Let's not forget that pride parades have stopped happening. They
Yeah.
stopped in 2020, and I don't know when the next pride parade will happen. So where meeting people in queer spaces has also stopped. Yes, we do have online events such as these, but how many people have access to the internet? There are many queer people, let's say in rural areas, who don't have access to the internet. Even in towns and cities, how many people can actually access the internet and take out time to watch sessions like these? And for how many people is English their first language, or language that they can actually understand things in? So with all of these points in mind, the pressures have been many on queer people, and I would say other people as well.
Yeah, I also feel that since it has had so much negative impact, to a large extent, queer people have had to resort to online spaces exclusively for expressing themselves, even like only those who can afford it in the first place, right? And but in this situation, even in online spaces, we see there a lot of the times that on social media sites, the community guidelines that are there, either they are not very well formulated, or even if they are not always very effective. So we see transphobic and homophobic posts getting so much engagement, so, many likes, many comments, many shares, and yet harmless posts by people from harmless posts from queer activists are sometimes taken down for no good reason, just because they have been reported by so many homophobic people again. And what do you think? What efforts must be made by these big tech companies in ensuring that queer people can at least express themselves online safely?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, and this is something that has been an issue for a long time, even before coronavirus hit. Uh, Transphobic, homophobic posts have found a place on the internet, and activists have been trying to put them down. And it's not just queerphobic posts; it's also misogynistic posts,
Yeah.
sexist posts, Islamophobic posts, various types of problematic casteist posts, etc. The list goes on. And it seems as though in the social media platform, what I have noticed is that there doesn't seem to be a very clear guideline. And so what happens is that if I see a post that is problematic, I can report against it. But in my personal experience, I have reported against such posts. Nothing has ever come out of it.
Exactly.
What has happened, however, is when many people report against some posts, I have noticed that sometimes they are taken down. But again, there's no guarantee. There have been many cases where people have actually taken pictures of me from dating apps. I'm on dating apps, and so people have taken those pictures and created fake accounts. They've shared my photos on Twitter or on various social media platforms, and I've tried to have those pictures taken down, but nothing came out of it. Very, very rarely did these social media platforms take down these posts. So on a personal level, also I've experienced this issue, and it's very troubling.
It's really
I really don't know what the solution is, except that maybe having some sort of customer care service, I don't know, helpline number or something, having someone you can email immediately, having someone who would respond to you within 24 hours. I think that's one suggestion. Another one would probably be them changing their guidelines,
Yeah.
and specifically mentioning that targeting communities like the LGBT community is not allowed. If you want to do that, go to some other platform. You now have new platforms like Koo and various other platforms that are coming up. You can join those platforms if you want to put stuff like that. It's not welcome on our platform. I think that is what I think
They need
these
to be-
organizations should do.
Yeah. They need to be stricter guidelines in general too. It's really, really concerning. So we are seeing these days, as we see every year in the Pride month of June, that companies excessively indulge in marketing all kinds of products as by making them rainbow themed. So do you think it's just a marketing gimmick, or do they have a significant contribution towards queer emancipation in some way too? I think it's just a gimmick. What do you feel?
Yeah, I actually think that to some extent it is important to celebrate Pride Month, because let's not forget that up until a few years ago, companies in India never did this.
Yeah.
I feel that it was only after 377 that companies jumped on the bandwagon, and now it's become a game of woke politics where different companies now want to showcase how inclusive they are, but they never did this before 377. Very few organizations did, and as some of the viewers or even you might know, that 377 also took many years for that law to be scrapped, and not just 377, Nalsa also was a very important law, and it took years for these laws to be scrapped. But how many corporations stood with the queer community all these years? Very few. So yes, absolutely. The point that you're alluding to, calling it a marketing gimmick, is also the academic term for it is called performative allyship,
Yeah.
where you basically pretend to be an ally just to showcase that you actually care about the community. And I do feel that to a very large extent, most corporations do behave that way, because as some you will know, and most of the viewers will know, I'm just looking at my calendar. Just a few more days to go before June gets over, and then we'll be back to the normal routine. But at the same time, having a month when corporations do talk about LGBT issues does bring some visibility, and I'm very grateful for that. I just wish that this mentality and this effort to give LGBTQ people a platform and include them happens throughout the year. So, for example, in December, when you're celebrating Christmas, New Year's, maybe when you're running a Valentine's Day campaign, which happens in February, I hope corporations include same-sex couples in their Valentine's Day program. On New Year's, when you're talking about celebrating New Year's with families, I hope they show advertisements where you have same-sex couples also, or maybe LGBT people. That way as a corporation, you're proving that this is not just something you do in 1 month, but something that you would do every single day of every single year. If corporations do that, then I would say that they're actually inclusive.
So I just wanted to mention this really ridiculous example from that comes to my mind from recent times. 2 years ago, Marks and Spencer in UK launched this sandwich, which they called the LGBT sandwich. But the acronym there stood for the ingredients within the sandwich. which were lettuce, guacamole, bacon, and tomato, and it ended up seeming like really ridiculous, honestly, because it's sort of like dumbed it down to a joke. So that is like really troubling. That sort of performative allyship. Okay, so another thing which I wanted to ask you is how has been the experience of queer people on dating sites? Like, do these sites manage to maintain a safe space or not?
No, I don't think so. In fact, I was chatting with somebody on a dating app just around 2 hours ago, and he asked me if I wanted to meet him. I said no, and then he started hurling
Oh,
abuses at me, and after that he
that's
blocked
so
me. So I've noticed that on dating apps like Grindr, especially, and I'm specifically speaking about Grindr, it's a dating app where people mostly look for hookups, but I've noticed that people there are very rude. There is just no sense of accountability. A person can block you, a person can lie to you, a person can send fake pictures to you, and there's literally nothing that you can do about it. In fact, I've seen not just me, but some of my close friends, pictures being misused and put on these platforms by random people. I've seen my own photos on it, and I've reported against it. Nothing has happened. I've chatted with people on Grindr who have told me on Grindr that they are 17 and 16. What I do is I take a screenshot and I send it to the Grindr whatever helpline, whatever they have. Nothing happens out of it. I've actually waited for days just to see if that profile is taken down or some sort of alert is sent to them. I've not seen anything happen. So this is Grindr, and by the way, you need to be above the age of 18 to access these apps.
yeah.
I'm not sure about Tinder and these other platforms, but I think on the whole, I would say that there's a lot of these online spaces. It's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it allows you to meet people. I've met a lot of amazing people on these dating apps, but then at the same time, I've also met horrible people. I know some of my friends who've been very close to being raped, who have been very close to being robbed, and I know some people who have met guys on dates through these apps and have then gotten robbed. So there is, as I said before, no sense of accountability, and it is a very scary place. And the worst part is because a lot of people don't have mentors, don't have people to guide them with the dating world, including me. I never had anyone to guide me.
Okay.
I would go on these apps and chat with random people, and whoever would show some sort of sympathy or affection towards me, I would chat with them. Some of them were manipulators, and this is a very common story. You hear a lot of
Yeah.
people at least from the gay community, saying that I've been manipulated. I met a guy, and then he lied to me, he cheated me, and then he dumped me. Who do you talk to? You can't talk to your family and friends. So there's a lot of issues with these dating apps, and I think then we need to have a serious conversation about safe dating as well. And that is something which I think there should be separate conversations for lesbian people, for gay people, for bisexual people, because bisexual people are there's biphobia within the community also.
Yeah, a lot of
All of these complications and problems exist. Yeah.
So, yeah. These days there are also a lot of memes being made which are targeting people who put pronouns in their bios. So, could you please highlight to our viewers how small actions like putting pronouns in our bios could actually go a long way in making people who belong to, gender minorities feel more comfortable, both online and offline actually?
Yeah. So I received I had asked for a sample meme because I had not come across these memes.
You had not?
And then I received one. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You had not?
I'm
There's
sorry.
an abundance of
Yeah, I had not.
on this.
See, that's probably because the circles and networks I'm a part of might be different from yours, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I have, I have come across some people who say things like pronouns I don't give an F or pronouns lol. I've seen people put that as on their Instagram handle, just as a way of saying that this is ridiculous. And anyway, as I mentioned before, somebody did share a meme, a sample meme, and I did see it. It said something like, why would you want to put your pronouns on your bio? So the answer is very simple. The reason why it's important to put pronouns on your bio is to signal to the other person that you cannot assume a person's gender just by looking at their face. The gender that we identify with may not match the gender that we were assigned to at birth. That's just a simple fact. For the vast majority of people, the gender that they identify with and the gender that they were born with will match, but for a small subsection of people, it will not.
Yeah.
Those people are people who are gender non-conforming, trans, or whatever, non-binary,
Gender.
etc.
Yeah.
So by putting your pronouns in your bio, you're telling people that I am trans inclusive, I am gender non-conforming inclusive, I support people who belong to the LGBT community, and these are my pronouns. So if you want to address me like you would like to address me, my pronouns are he, him. This is how you can address me. And I think it sends a very important message to people that we support you and we believe in your transition journey. If you wish to transition, or if you don't wish to transition and just want to be addressed with a different pronoun, that's fine. Because as all of us know, gender is not a biological fact. Our understanding of gender is influenced by culture and society.
Exactly.
And so that's why it's important for us to mention that because gender is not a biological fact, I believe that I want to be called he, him, but maybe tomorrow.
There's a lag. There was a lag in between.
Yeah, I think I anyway completed what I had to say.
Yeah.
If I was not clear, I could repeat.
No, I think we largely got the point. It's honestly really concerning. There are jokes as ridiculous as like we mentioned our pronouns like he/him, right? People would go on and write shirt/up, and it's really like disconcerting. Like it's such a small thing, and that even can't be followed. So yeah.
Can I just
No.
yeah, can I just say something there, that there will always be people who will criticize anything that's different in the as far as gender and sexuality advocacy is concerned. So if you try to introduce sex education, people will say you're destroying our culture.
Yeah.
You try to add pronouns, people will say you're trying to be woke. You try to talk about same-sex marriage, people will say you're destroying family values. No matter how much you try, there will always be people who will disagree. I think the most powerful thing you can do is just put your pronoun.
Yeah.
And just by doing that, putting it on your bio, putting it on your email signature, on my Zoom, on my Instagram, I mentioned it on my Instagram, I've put it on my Zoom. So it's everywhere. So if people have a problem with it, it's their problem.
Defiance is the best way. So yeah, I also wanted to ask you that being a core team member of Harmless Hugs, what kind of change have you witnessed over the years in how the Pride movement is perceived in the larger society?
What I've noticed is that there were quite a lot of people in Harmless Hugs even before 377. But after the judgment, I've seen that there have been now more people who want to join Harmless Hugs. I've also seen that the news reporting on LGBT issues has changed. So previously, before 377, I used to manage the Facebook page, by the way.
Okay.
So I was responsible for putting the news. So I remember in 2017 when I started doing this, I would always find very negative news like somebody has died, some gay person has died, or somebody committed suicide, or in fact there were days when I didn't even get any news of LGBT issues in India, so I had to look for news in other parts of the world and put that. So this is happening in Canada, this is happening in America. So it was very weird. It was as though this issue was not even worthy of being discussed. After the judgment, I've noticed that there has now been an increase in the number of the news articles on this issue, and there's been a lot of movement and conversation. So same-sex marriage, for example, the discussion started last year in March. I remember I wrote an article for Feminism in India, in which the idea of a same-sex marriage at that time had just begun. Now, it's been 1 year, and I see that there are hundreds of articles now on debating same-sex marriage in India. There have been many cases of violence also, conversion therapy related violence in the form of people being disowned, lots of issues. Then there have been progressive judgments also. There was a recent judgment where I think Madras High Court judge, he wanted to basically include LGBT issues in the school curriculum.
Yeah.
So there have been some good news, some bad news, but there has been news, and people have noticed have wanted to join the Harmless Hug. I've also noted that unlike before, now when I post something on the Facebook page, some people are very open about the fact that they are gay or lesbian. They write it in the comment section. I have a YouTube channel also. If people go to my YouTube channel and read some of the comments in my videos, there are people who write, I am LGBT, I am proud, can I connect with you? I have faced this issue at home, I want to ask you this question. And I never saw this kind of openness before. So definitely there has been some change. But at the same time, I don't think this change is very substantial, because I'm seeing all this on the internet, but there are people on the ground who may not be so open. And I don't think that's the case in most families. So I think we still have a long way to go. And the internet is definitely a space where people can find some sort of support, but it's not enough. As we discussed in the beginning, how many people have access to the internet?
Exactly. Okay, so coming to a different topic, a thing that I have noticed a lot of allies get wrong is responding when someone comes out to them. Like, there's virtually no guidance provided to them, no sex education, nothing. That how do you address a person who has just revealed something so huge about their identity, about their life, and it ends up sometimes being like insensitive, even if they don't wish to be insensitive. So could you please suggest some do's and don'ts for our viewers on how to approach this as allies?
Yeah, I would say that one thing that I like to hear is one thing that I like to hear is hearing a congratulation, because a lot of people don't realize that it takes a lot of courage to come out, and it also takes a lot of courage to come out to a particular person. And if somebody does decide to come out, they have done it, they have made a very conscious decision, because I've come out to you and not her, and there's a reason I came out to you, because I felt that you are someone I can speak to. So I think that it's very important to congratulate the person. It's also important to give them the space to tell you as much or as little as they want to tell you. So suppose I come out to someone and tell them that I am gay, I don't think it's appropriate for the other person to ask me, okay, you're gay, so are you in a relationship? Are you top? Are you bottom? How many guys have you met? Because I know people who sometimes out of just curiosity like to ask these questions, but I think that's unnecessary. I also think that it's important to just give them support and tell them that I'm there for you. If you need help, I'm just going to be there for you. I support you no matter what. And if you want to share anything else, please feel free to share it with me. Also, one more thing I would like to add is I've noticed this trend where suppose somebody comes out to you and you become their friend, there's this trend to basically latch on to that gay person as a trophy, that, oh, he's my gay friend, he's my gay brother. And so whenever a conversation of LGBT rights, exactly, whenever a conversation of LGBT rights or any such issue comes up, they say, oh, my brother is gay, my friend is gay, and I'm supportive, etc., etc. I think that's okay, as long as you have permission from that person, where you tell the person that, listen, you have told me that you're gay. Is it okay if when I'm having a conversation with my colleagues that I bring your name up? On? Because it could be that some people would not be comfortable. So you have to ask how many people, you need to ask that person how many people they are comfortable knowing their secret. And I think that's another way you can show solidarity. And I would just say one last thing is, it's not just about how much support you show to the person in front of you, but how much support you show to them when they're not around you. So if you're in a friend circle and if people are being homophobic or saying things like, oh, meetha, whatever, chakka, then you need to stand up for them even when your friend or brother or whatever is not in the room. That shows you're a true ally.
And I see a lot of people like being performative online, being like, okay, we support the community. But yeah, I know people who like in a group setting, they would be very either fearful of judgment, either, I don't know, very insecure, but they won't like do this. And yeah, it's really concerning. So as you mentioned, and I hope our viewers know by now, that we are still a long way away from being at a place as a society where every single queer person can, state who they are, express themselves freely. So, and it could be either because of a fear of judgment, it could be either because fear of not being accepted, and moreover, people, there are a lot of people out there who are still questioning, their sexual orientation and figuring it out, myself included. So, I just want to ask you, as an activist, as a human rights activist, what kind of message would you like to send out to them?
Is it for people who are still trying to figure out their sexuality
Both.
or gender identity?
Yeah, people who are still trying to, and also people who are still in the closet and they don't feel comfortable enough. They are not in comfortable
Yeah.
situations to express themselves and state who they are.
Yeah, I think it's a very, if to each person their own.
Yeah,
I think
they
everyone
don't
needs to
owe it
take
to
their
anyone.
time, and coming out is a very personal choice.
Hmm.
So if you feel that it's something you wish to do, you should. For some people, it's also not a choice. You know, when I came out, I felt very pressurized by myself because I was very depressed and I
Okay.
wanted to tell people. So I didn't really have the. I don't think I had really had a choice, even though no one had held a gun to
Hmm.
my head. I was in a very bad my mental health was in a very bad situation. So I just had to come out because it was very evident from the way I was behaving and the way I was living life. So I think it really depends on how strong you are also as a person, where you are in your life in terms of career, and also whether you stay with family or not. I think it makes sense, to be very to be very to be the pragmatist in me will say that if you have a job, if you're living away from family, if you're a bit independent, it is a good idea to then probably think about coming out, or maybe
Hmm.
exploring your sexuality with other people. Because if you're still staying with your family, if you don't really have a job, if you're not very independent, and if you wish to come out, there's a high chance that you will not be received with support from your parents. And if they do decide to, let's say, abandon you or exert violence on you, where will you go? It's very, very sad, but the
It's very
support systems in
unfortunate.
our country for people are not really there, especially those who are abandoned. Um, but at the same time, I do want to stress the importance of mental health. There are lots of therapists available, so it's important to confide in someone. I don't think this is a secret anyone should keep to themselves. And the good news is that now, even suicide helplines, even mental health therapists are
How
more
often do
care
they work
sensitive
though?
than before recently.
A
Sorry.
lot of the times, like these helplines and all, they are not functional most of the times. It's really unfortunate.
Yes. That's another issue. I faced that problem once when I called one of these helplines. They are not functional. There are some helplines that or other organizations where you can send an email and they respond. I
Hmm.
have had that conversation once
Okay.
with one such organization. I sent them an email, they responded back, and then I sent
How
another
quick
email
was
and
the
they responded
response?
back. They responded within they took a while though. I mean, I wanted immediate
Hmm.
responses. And I volunteered with one with a suicide helpline once many years back. The problem is that all of these helplines are run by volunteers. Most of them are run by
Yeah.
volunteers. This is not their full-time job. So the
Oh,
sad part is
all
I
right.
understand why they take so much time, because these people have other things to do. I honestly think that with mental health and with especially with these helplines, it should be a full-time job, and there should be people who are compensated for it and paid a decent amount of money, maybe through government subsidies or something of that sort. Because when I volunteered, I remember I was told that you're not going to get paid for it, and the volunteers who were with me, they only did it because they wanted to help people, and
How many
that is the
people?
only motivation people have.
Yeah.
That is why you will see people not responding sometimes, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
But then there are some
Hmm.
people who do respond.
Hmm.
So again, finding therapists is important, but it's again, that's another story. It's not easy.
Yeah, a lot of it is expensive. There are some therapists who are recently coming up offering free therapy to students, especially LGBTQ students. So that's good to see. Thank you, sir. This has been a great session. We got to learn a lot from you, and I see only hope seeing people like you out there looking out for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Any last words?
I would just say that I think the point that you raised at the end was very accurate. That the future, there is a future, a bright future, but unfortunately, I feel that the future will be bright in the distant. I think that at the moment we still have a long way to go,
Yeah.
and I think that it's very important for more people to speak out. So it's really good that you're having conversations like this. I would like to see more conversations like this, not just in Pride Month, but in other days of the year. And this
Probably.
isn't just you or your organization, but this is something I would say across the board. And I think that it's important for more and more allies to be involved. I'll just quickly say that I've recently joined Clubhouse and I'm seeing some very interesting conversations there. And I think that on Clubhouse also, I do understand that there are some people who have very, very negative and very, very hurtful conversations also.
Yeah.
But it's important for it's just important to have these discussions. And for me, it has been great because I've connected with a lot of interesting people there. And I've also used my voice to speak in platforms where generally queer people don't speak. So, for example, there was a session last night at 2 a.m. about freedom of speech. And a lot of people there were talking about censorship. And a lot of people there, most of them were not queer. They were talking about how important censorship is because you have to quote unquote protect Indian culture. So I spoke in that session and I told them that listen, while I appreciate what a lot of you are saying, I'm not sure I agree with this because for a long time, queer depictions of romance has also been considered to be not a part of. So I noticed after I spoke, people there seemed to appreciate what I said, and it seemed to have changed some of their minds. So all I'm saying is that it's important to join conversations and spaces and use your voice in platforms like Clubhouse, which is new, YouTube, Instagram, and just speak your truth. I think that's important.
Thank you so much, sir. It has been a great session.
Thank you for having me. All the best.
Thank you.